Good day. In this, I'm going to talk about how to communicate being impacted by a layoff in job interviews. Okay, and right from the start, this is perfectly possible that you're a high-performing candidate even if you were impacted by layoffs, and I had plenty of examples of people who got up-leveled after being impacted by layoffs. Okay, now what types of questions could trigger this conversation? Well, it could be as simple as why this company? Why do you want to join this company? And some candidates feel like they want to be upfront that they were impacted by a layoff, right? And they would want to talk about it as you know, right from where the interview begins. And I'm going to give you some examples in a moment. But the second question, probably the more common one, would be why did you leave your last role? Okay, so why did you leave your last role? You would want to be sincere with them. There's no need to hide anything from this, right? Now, on the topic of how to best answer this or how to best communicate being impacted by a layoff, even a recent layoff, I specialize in behavioral interviews. Okay, that where the interviewer is looking at your past experiences as a predictor of success in your future role. And in behavioral interviews, there's failure questions. Tell me about the time when you failed, right? A layoff is a negative experience. Okay, so the best way to sell yourself in a job interview with a negative question, with a failure story, so to speak, would be through its learnings. Okay, so one way to answer this would be by focusing on the learnings you took from that experience. For example, the layoffs taught me a lesson I'll never forget, that you have to constantly be expanding your expertise with training because business changes constantly, right? Of course, your learnings, you would want to tailor those learnings even further, but this would be approach number one. The second approach you would want to consider of communicating that you were impacted by layoffs and not necessarily focusing on the layoffs itself. So, for example, why did you leave your last role, or why this company, could also be pitched simply, yes, I was impacted by a recent layoff. However, I believe this would be an amazing opportunity right now for the role now because of this, and that. So in other words, yes, you would be sincere with them that you were impacted by a layoff, but the main thing would be that, hey, I'm a unique candidate and now it's a unique opportunity for you to take advantage of me because of these facts, because of this factual information, right? So remember I said that I specialize in behavioral interviews, so I would still want to link with some previous experiences, but the main thing would be that you would sell yourself as the ideal candidate if in a context of layoffs. Okay, and again, it's something that people do. People have experience with these approaches which previously worked, right? So this would be the how you would go around answering, right? Now, what you should also keep in mind is that if it's a recent layoff, it's in behavioral interviews, the more recent the experience, the more predictive of your performance in these job interviews. So if it's a very recent layoff, you would want to spend a bit more time in convincing them that you're a high performer. Okay, and if you choose that, and basically what I'm trying to say here is that you should stay away from bluffing. Okay, because if you bluff your way in these job interviews and you got impacted by a layoff, there's, okay, this guy is suspicious because he might make up some numbers, he might oversell you. Everyone sells themselves in these interviews these days with AI and whatnot. The second, hey, this guy was also impacted by a layoff. So there's already two reasons for them to be skeptical about you. So my advice would be to be super careful around presenting yourself with accurate and realistic information in these job interviews, not to trigger them to become suspicious about your ability to perform, right? And maybe last note I want to talk about here is that there's also a risk with these failure questions. Tough questions in job interviews might make candidates open up. You're being super honest with them, you're being a little bit too honest with them, right? So previously I said, in my earlier point, I said that you shouldn't sell yourself with some fake numbers, fake stories, and try to be truthful. being too honest in job interviews is also something you should seriously be skeptical about, because in my experience there's no perfect candidate and there is no perfect job. Okay, so basically you would have some stuff that you would not necessarily want them to know about yourself, so try to be cautiously optimistic. Is the attitude I recommend candidates have, because interviews, after all, are very formal experiences and will determine, your future career. Right. So these were my points. I hope you found this useful, and thank you very much for watching.